Welcome to the Fishing Daily Podcast with me, Oliver McBride. June 23rd will see the gathering of the Irish fishing fleet in a show and tell aimed at the Irish public at large. The event will take place at Dublin Port, and everyone is invited to the event to learn more about the Irish fishing industry and the crisis it is currently experiencing. I am joined by Patrick Murphy, one of the organisers of the event and CEO of the Irish South and West Fish Producers Organisation, to discuss more about the up-and-coming rally. Welcome back, Patrick. And you're here today to talk about the next event that's been held for the Irish fishing industry. Could you tell us a little more about what's happening?
Well, after the very successful event, and I would call it a very successful event, in Cork, where we brought the flotilla of boats from the southwest, and there was other boats from all around the country that joined us, that do from Dingle up the southeast coast as well too, from Kilmore Quay, and boats down around Union Hall, and everybody joined us. So we had a fine, good gathering and showing, more than I imagined, and it actually scared me because I was afraid we might be in trouble with the amount of people that turned up in the pier from COVID restrictions, but people were very good. They lined up and they separated, and we had stewards there. So that really went well. But unfortunately, the desired result of handing in the letter and stuff like that didn't take the immediate effect that we were hoping it would. And even though now that we have the second event on, so we contacted the other producer organisations and we said, look, we're going to Dublin. It's as simple as that. Everybody was advising us, great, very well done in Cork, but if you're really going to let the people know, you'll have to go to the capital city. So we started contacting the others and we started letting them know that that this was on the cards. And this time, in fairness, I don't think anybody said no to us. We put out some emails to some organisations. We were short notice. All of this has to be done very quickly, and there's a lot of logistics involved in it. It's not just a case of you just rock up to the mouth of the harbour and steam up the river. There's an awful lot goes into this communication back and forth between the guards and the port authorities, and working times out and hotels even where we're going staying, logistics with the others, going through the paperwork here that's in front of me, the Irish fishing industry issues for government and the EU Commission. We've reduced our points from 7 to 6, so we've more condensed them, but none of these we felt could be taken off. And some people say maybe that's a mistake, but it's not. Each one of these points are really critical to the industry, and without one of the 6, we're in trouble. So we have to discuss all 6 points. So in fairness, all the producer organisations, the processing organisation, IMRO, the new lads came on board. We spoke to NIFA and NIFO and the NIF and the RIF. So they're not joining us officially, and they felt that there was too much there that couldn't bring them together on the day, which is unfortunate. It really is. Maybe our list was drafted, they felt would not them in mind, but for me, like the Brexit, the TCA agreement, where we lose fish, everybody loses fish. Our control plan, that affects them. I know traditional access around Rockall mightn't be what the small boats would be looking for. Enforcement, definitely, penalty points will affect every fisherman in this country. The Brexit adjustment fund, sure, look, they're affected by Brexit as well too, and the loss of fish. So I presume they'll be, looking for a few bob as well too. Everybody's suffering from that, so that affects them. And definitely the renegotiation of our common fishery policy, that's critical. So number 6, so that's going to affect every boat as well too. So we thought, look, even for the processors and everybody else, this affects everybody. So look, we're going to Dublin on the 23rd. We're going to do what we did before. We're going to link in with the harbour port authorities. We're going to have a lead vessel. They will follow one up after the other. We'll be very respectful of the residents, because we even are going there at a time that suits both the guards and the harbour port authorities. We're going up in the middle of the night, middle of the morning actually. So around 4 o'clock, which is the best time to raise the bridge. Less traffic on the river, the ferries are gone, less cars there. We're actually going up there to just do the same as Cork, a show and tell event. We want the people of Ireland to understand that this isn't just about the fishing industry, right? We're the ones on the front line that are going to get it hit hardest, definitely. We're the ones that if we don't overturn this, we'll see 1 in 5 boats being decommissioned. So if you come to Dublin and you see those boats, it'll be amazing to see 1 in 5. How would you pick them? You know, these are modern vessels like that will travel the oceans and seas. There's no danger of them. They're top class. The skill set that's on board these vessels is top class. And it should be a national asset rather than a burden. You know, somebody said to me, Oliver, we're not going up there looking for money or handouts. Imagine, we're going to Dublin asking for permission to make a living, to use the national resources of our country, not just to make a living for ourselves, but to support our coastal communities, to support the exchequer, to put money in the pockets of the exchequer, to pay for the nurses, the doctors, pay for the new roads, water, everything. Look, it's very simple. Other countries are taking our natural resource and they're benefiting it in their own countries. They're feeding their people with the fish. They're looking after them, healthy, nutritious food. And they're using the money that they're generating for that for their own economy and bolstering up all the other civil service services that are there, you know, social services. And we are being told by Europe that, you know, it's all right for them to take 85% of the fish from our waters to bolster their economies, knowing that this is going to put Irish men and women out of jobs. Our fish in our waters. Now, we gave them the right to look after the sustainability of the stocks. That's all. We didn't give them the fish. We gave them the right to continue to fish in our waters. They set the quotas. They set them back in the 1970s. And even though they enshrined the safety measure that this was to protect not just the sustainability of the stocks, but the sustainability of the coastal communities. And now they know they're going to fail in that one. They know that they're going to harm our coastal communities and harm our country. And they're going ahead with it anyway. You don't hear anybody talking about the fleets in Europe. Are they going to lose boats? You know, we see more and more beamers and coming from other countries now. So we raised that issue about displacement. That's happening. So for anybody to say, oh, it could have been worse, there is nothing worse than losing 20% of your fishing fleet. How could that be worse? Like, for somebody to say that that's a win is absolute madness. And that 20%, but we were on the back foot as it was. Like, we didn't have enough fish in our own waters before this. We only had 20%. Right across the board, both pelagics and demersal. Like, if you break it down to the likes of hake, 10 million euros worth of hake is what our country is allowed to catch. From a pot of 180 million. That's not even 10%. Like. And that's not covering all the hake in the European waters, just where we fish. So it's not taking into the hake above in Sweden or those waters. So we count the size of the water when it suits Europe to say, sure, you've only this amount of water. They don't take into consideration the actual amount of fishing water. The waters off many of the European coastlines that you can't trawl and you can't fish there. It's too deep. But that's all thrown into the pot. So they distort the figures. But there's no distorting this figure. Ireland is being left with less fish in their water that they need to keep the current fleet going without developing the industry. It's killing our industry. It's killing and harming our coastal communities. Shops and towns all around our coasts will be closed after this. Schools will be closed. And I'm not just saying they may or making scaremongering. I'm telling anybody looking at this, small national schools around our coastline will be closed if this goes ahead. Because I've already seen it happen in where my young fellow went to school. Where my oldest went to school, that school no longer exists. It's gone. And when he was going to that school, another school was closed. So that's 2 schools gone in one small area. And that's down to lack of jobs and opportunities in our rural communities to keep people living there. Like, you hear everybody in the cities, God, it's lovely to go down to West Cork, or it's lovely to go to Donegal and see the place. That means it's a lovely place to be and it's a lovely place to live in. So why would you leave it? You would leave it because you didn't have an opportunity to make enough money in a business there to support your family. And this is a business that goes back through millennia. There was no computers when there was fishing. There was no broadband when there was fishing. And fishing will be there well after that as well too, if we look after it. And it's absolutely crazy that we have to go to Dublin now on the 23rd But luckily, we have the vast majority of our industry coming with us. And we want more people to come. Don't let it up to somebody else. We want you to come. Whoever's looking at this afterwards, we need you in Dublin on the 23rd of June. This is it. This is your chance to stand up for your coastal communities, whether you're a fisherman or whether you're working in the community or whether you're living in the community. This will affect you. And I'd go so far as to say to people who are not even in those communities, this will affect you too. We get 1 billion euros worth of economy out of fishing. 1 billion euros to our economy. That's what generates inside our economy. That's a lot of money. If we got the fair share of fish in our waters, instead of losing 5%, we should be gaining 20 more percent. That would double to 2 billion. And that's what it means. And that could even be developed further because there'd be more jobs, I reckon. If we had more fish, we'd be able to do more with it. We'd have more investment. So money makes money. And that's the truth of it. So we're asking people to come to Dublin and meet us, talk to the fishermen, and help us. Help yourself. That's what I'm hoping for on the 23rd of June.
Would the government stand for any other industry to lose so much of its economy? Like the Irish seas, we get 15%. The rest of the EU member states get 85%. That's totally out of proportion.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else stand for this. Like even if you did that to the bus drivers, do you know what I mean? Like pick any industry and tell them that they're going to lose 20% of their gross, not their earnings, 20% of the gross. Like that's a knock-on effect right through to every other industry. So we're not saying this is affecting the fishing industry. We're saying this is affecting the shops, even the garages that sell the cars. If you don't have money in your pocket to spend, then they're going to suffer. You know, we've seen what happened with austerity. So to answer your question, not a hope. They wouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Look, even if a factory closed in a rural community, there's a task force set up in that community to see can they replace the jobs. We have a task force set up at the moment, yeah. But here's the thing. Aquaculture, yes, there are hope for aquaculture, but that should be in addition to, not instead of. Do you know what I mean? If there is another way of creating jobs in rural Ireland, right, then you should build on the ones that are there. Why take away one job and say, right, you can do this instead? That's madness. This is our natural resource. You know, this is just something that's there for us that we should be, you know, we don't have to build a factory to create a job. We need to protect the ones that are there and then build a factory to create more jobs and use the fish that are off our waters to turn it into maybe an added value product and send that out to the countries who are screaming for this food. There's more fish being brought into Europe than is being caught by the European fleet. So there's a huge ready-made market there already for our produce. We just need to have more with it. But you see, you need investment and you need money to drive that investment, like to put it into the industry in the first place. But who would? Like if you think that it's going to be taken away from you in the morning, why would you invest? That'd be madness. You know, and I've used this word now on the interviews with you many times, and it is like this. It makes no sense for a country to have the riches that they have off its coastline. You know, like look at the landlocked countries in Europe, and they're just looking at us, salivating at what the possibilities they would have if they had this. I guarantee they'd be talking about it inside meetings. Jesus, if I had that they have now, I do this with it, and I do that with it, and I do this with it. And sure, we're being robbed of it. Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely madness. Like we see in the common fishery policy, even in the supports that's given. Sure, we don't get as much as landlocked countries for fishing. You know, there's more money probably given to the other countries. Like, if we had to do this and go through all the wrongs that are there, you know, people would start to think it was a science fiction novel that, you know, you couldn't understand. A novel, sorry, slipped the word. So, like, it beggars belief, you know, the INFAF fund. Just have a look at that and see who gets what. You know, we get a pittance, and we've the richest fishing grounds now in Europe. You see what happens with Norway and the Faroes. Like, this is endemic of what we're talking about here. So those countries just, do you know what, European Union, screw you, we're just going to take more fish. And the European Union goes, oh, you can't do that. This will damage the sustainability of the stocks. But who ends up paying the price? So if you look back at their short history in fishing, the European Union had a way more fish to begin with. And every year it's being eroded. But the ones paying the biggest price of anybody else is the Irish fishermen. And every 5 years it's like rolling it out. Like, you know, some people go in and buy a new car. Fishermen, they see their boats being taken off them, or there's less put in the water, there's more taken out. You know, there's like it's absolute craziness. Like, you know, we have very little young people coming into the industry, and even the families of these lads, you know, they don't see a future in it. And when I grew up in this industry first, to see the lads with the big boats, you said, geez, those fellas have made it now. Look at the boats they have. Look at the money they're going to make. They're like a weight around their necks now. If they've taken out big loans and big mortgages on those boats, they even though the fish are in vast quantities outside of our doorstep, they're not allowed to catch it. So they have to worry and catch less fish, run away from fish, genuinely, like they have to run away from fish, avoid fish, because they don't have the proper quotas to catch them. But somebody else alongside them does, like. So they leave a fishing ground and leave it to the other fellas. But the other fellas are European boats that have more fish in our waters to take back to their countries. Sure, it's just not right, like. And surely be to God, our government and our Taoiseach and our minister can see that he doesn't need a civil servant to tell him you can't or you can't do this. Make your own mind up, like. Look at what we're saying to them. Look outside the doors of the Dáil now on the 23rd and say, well, hang on a second. Can all these people be wrong? You know, who are we listening to? Who's telling us we can't do this? Why are all these people coming up? And again, we're not asking for handouts, we're not asking for money. We're asking for fish. Just to be allowed to catch a fair share of fish where we fish, in our waters. We're not looking for it in France. We're not looking for it off Norway. We're not looking for it off Denmark. Any other countries. They're not looking for it in the North Sea. They're not looking at it off Spain. We just want to catch the fish outside our own door, like our forefathers did before us, and a fair share of it. Like, these countries would not for a second entertain that the likes of Ireland could go down and take the quantities that they're allowed. Like, look at the monkfish share out. 59% is what the French have of monk in our waters. Imagine if we went down there and said, well, we'll take 59% Pierre. He'd shoot you. There's no way. Look at that. And if you think I'm exaggerating, you see what happens with the scallop fisheries. Ramming each other, firing flares off at each other. That's how they protect their waters and fight for it. Blockading, threatening, you don't let us in, we'll cut off the power. Sure, that's going to be another threat if we bring in the connector from France. Is that what's going to happen in a few years' time? Oh, we want another 5%. You take 10. Yeah, no, we turn off your power. Like, talk about being part of a club that threatens you and bullies you and steals from you and robs from you. Jesus Christ, we're idiots to be inside a club like that. No, I know the benefits of Europe and stuff like that, but do we trade our souls for it? Do we allow people to tell the people in our coastal communities, there's no room for you here, buddy. We have to give it to the other fella, that this was part of the deal. This is to satisfy our nearest neighbours, the UK. But on top of that, then you pay double because, as the head of DG Mara said, it's your proximity is the reason why you asked that question. That question was asked. That was the answer that came back. You're too close to him, lad. Sorry about that. You know, the mackerel and the prawns, they were the ones that they wanted, and you pay the price. That is absolutely ridiculous. What about the rest of the fish? So, right, if you take them off us, then give us more hake, give us more haddock, give us more monk, balance the books. It's a simple thing. They're all fish.
Europe seems to be unwilling to balance this, to have burden sharing of any type.
Yeah, they want to keep what they have and take more, and they know that we're a soft touch. No, I'm not a soft touch. I go to these meetings. I have no problem calling them out. I say it to their faces. Well, why wouldn't I? What are they going to do? Beat me up? You know, like, so why aren't our Taoiseach and the others going out there and saying, no, we're not accepting this. It's just not right. So take it to a courtroom. Take in the Uniclass law and show them the other. You've signed up. This is another law. You've signed up to the Uniclass law. Like we had the G7 summit, and all of them saying, oh, United Nations are so important, and the President of the United States, oh, we have to build back trust and come together as a group. Jesus, if that's the future for Ireland to be inside the group, I hope they stay separate, because if they come together and they decide they want more office, we'll have nothing left. Like, this is crazy. This is 15% left to a nation that have the fish. We're not asking to go somewhere else to catch their fish. We just want a fair share of the fish in our own waters. That's all. And if anybody thinks that that's madness, then they're mad. It's as simple as that. You cannot say to a country, you're not entitled to the fish in your own waters, and therefore we're going to tell your boats, we're going to put in a decommissioning scheme to wipe you out, to take out as many boats as we can to keep our boats fishing instead of your boats. That's just not right. There's no union in European Union in that. That's just not right. It's madness is the word that I say, but we must be mad to allow it to continue. And our fishermen have shown massive resolve and patience, and they're mature is the way I would describe them, because they know that if they go up there and start shouting and roaring and bawling, their message won't be heard. They deserve huge credit for keeping the dignity that they have, knowing that they've been told 1 in 5 of you will have to go. And I think it's more, to be honest with you, I think because of the cuts in our quotas as it was before this, in our own waters. Like, you see, if you have a 10% margin, right, and somebody cuts 10%, then you have no margin. But if you're a country with 70% of the fish, you don't have a 10% margin. You probably have 20-25% margin. So if somebody cut you 10%, yeah, it's nasty, but it doesn't put you out of business. Who with us, you see? So we're like hemophilia. A cut to us will bleed us to death, whereas the other fella, he'll heal. And that's what it is like. And we have to start getting real about this in our country. And this, as I said, if this happens to our industry, and Europe decides tomorrow morning, well, okay, so Poland needs more milk, more farmers, or France, they're down, their farmers need more, or they need more crops, or whatever else, or, we couldn't grow them, and whatever else, we're going to bring in genetic crops. God knows what's coming, right? And this is being talked about all over the world, about food and growing food inside the laboratories. Who's to turn around tomorrow and say, right, we don't need the grass-fed cattle inside Ireland anymore? It's not right. It's creating too much carbon emissions. It's already been talked about. And they ring up tomorrow, and Ursula von der Leyen or whoever replaces her in a few years' time rings up and says, look, we're after looking at this now, and the planet's in danger, and we'll take out 20% of your cattle. Who's to say that won't happen? Like, I guarantee if you talk to a farmer, he'll probably say it's going to happen. So we're destroying the foundation of our state, what we were built on. We're destroying our rural Ireland communities, and fishing just is the first on the chopping block if we don't stop it. And I think we should stop it. And I think we have a right to stop it. And I think if we're part of a European Union that believes in justice, that believes that the UK on the same fishing grounds, as I keep saying, are entitled to 75% in their own waters. That's not the end of it. They have another 10%, I believe, in European waters. They look for access to Norway. They look for access to us. They look for access to the Spanish fish. They're actually fishing more in European waters than we do, I'd say. So if they're entitled to that, and the European Union are saying this is okay, then how can they keep turning to us and say we're the ones to pay the price and we're not entitled to the same thing as a country now that's supposed to say that leaves? That because we're part of the European Union, all our rights are taken from us and are theirs now, and they can do what they like because we're a part of the union. So there's no union there. It's daylight robbery as far as I'm concerned. This is where we're at.
We're in a different, Irish fishing is in a different position to the fishing, say, in France or Spain or Holland or any of these other places, where it's companies that owns the businesses, owns the fishing fleet, rather than what you call it. Here, these are family businesses. And when people see these boats in Dublin and places like, or in Cork, they're not just looking at a big boat. This is a family industry. This is maybe a lot of debt because it costs a lot of money to keep boats going and everything else. So how can you get that message across to the public when they're there?
Well, like for us, that's a real serious issue, is that people will see boats on the pier and they say, sure, that boat is worth 3 million or 4 million or 5 million. Actually, to replace it, it costs probably double that. But you see, it's only worth what it can catch. It's only valuable to what it's allowed to bring into the cod end. As people say, the cod end pays for everything. So what comes out of the cod end pays for the maintenance of the boat, the oil for the boat, the crew's wages, the grub for the boat, the maintaining of the boat, the regulations that demand that the boats have to have a communication system on board, which is Wi-Fi. You can imagine it's not the same as paying for Wi-Fi for your phone. You're talking about hundreds of euros every month that has to be paid for this. You have modern engines that can't go cold. They have to be kept warm. So there has to be either electricity or power to keep those engines in the top nip condition, because, as you said, they're worth hundreds of thousands. Like it's not the same as going into the car, getting your car serviced or whatever else. These engines are worth a fortune because they do a massive job. They're driving these vessels through the sea, like, you know, so they have to be maintained at the highest standard. So do the boats. And like, salt is a corrosive substance for metal, like it just eats away at it. So these boats have to be painted and decorated every year, like not just to make them look pretty, but to protect them. And you have corrosion and you have wear and tear up against the side of a boat. Like, and it's not a case of just pulling in and replacing, pulling off a panel, you know, that it slots back into it like a car. It's part of the structure of the boat. Like, it's taking, like, so to take a piece out of a boat is like taking the pillar out of a car or taking the chassis off the bottom of it, you know? So all these things, so they're not making enough money just as it is to maintain these boats. And again, not because they can't do it, not because they won't do it, not because there isn't fish to do it, but because they're not given enough fish. So they're at a disadvantage, again, and that element as well. So the boats are getting older. So people have to look at these people that are on the pier and see, isn't he a success? Despite everything and anything that's been thrown at him, weather and everything else, look at the piece of equipment that he's managed to aspire to that can go out and catch the fish. And instead of looking at them saying, well, he's rich and he's loaded, look at the frustration that that person has an ability to go out and make loads of money, genuinely, if he was given the fish. So, as I said, if they're just surviving on that, can you imagine if you gave them double the fish? That means they're doubling the money. But these people spend their lives at sea. They go out, they work, they catch the fish. So they're not coming in driving around in Ferraris then and showing off their wealth. They're back out to the sea again. They're modernizing their boat. They're making it better. They're making the crews better grub for the crews. They spend the money that they earn back into their own business to make sure it's tip-top. And they want to show all the other fishermen, look at my boat, look, she's pristine. They have pride in their vessel. Why? Because they've spent their lifetime getting it. You know, it's like their house. You know, if somebody has pride in their house, they paint their house every year. They make sure the garden, they might have a gardener coming in, pruning the trees and everything else. They've pride in their property. It's the same for a boat. But imagine if you're told that you don't have the wherewithal to keep that boat in the condition it should be in. So instead of now of having an asset that's there that to be proud of, you have a noose around your neck and that worry and passing that on to the next generation or the next lad, like, and being told then that there's archaic laws being brought in on top of you, on top of that. So if you step out of line or you make a mistake, or if somebody deems you've made a mistake, And even if you exonerate yourself inside the court of law, these fellas still find you guilty because that's their view. And out you come and you're done. Like, so the threat over their head is they're not even going to get fairness inside in the judgment of their actions. Do you know what I mean? And like, I can give you examples of that, like I've given you before, but I don't want to be distracted from what's happening in Dublin, but that is a point that's there. Like, you know, we want to be treated the same. If you want to criminalize a fisherman, put him into a courtroom, treat him the same as any other citizen. And if he's deemed guilty in front of his peers and outside the courtroom, then he'll take the punishment. But it's 10 times worse when a fisherman knows, well, hang on a second now, you're misrepresenting the facts, right? You're treating me wrong here. If you give me an opportunity really to explain what you believe I've done wrong, I can show you that I didn't do wrong. And look, we read novels and books about this all the time, or you hear about fellas going into prison, they're innocent, found out 10 or 15 years later, right? Well, this is the same with fishermen. Only at least those fellas that were found guilty had a chance inside the courtroom that they believe they did their best to make sure, and they give them every opportunity to defend themselves. You don't have that now with penalty points outside the court. It's an administrative sanction. It's based on the balance of probabilities. You've got all the deck stacked against you. You just can't win. Like, they're not going to admit they were wrong. It's not in their interest to admit they were wrong. So once they say you're guilty, and that's the end of it. Like, but the consequences for that is it destroys your property rights. You can't sell on your boat. It's tough enough as it is. That if you wanted to get out of fishing, who's going to get into it because we know there's not enough fish. So here we are talking down our own industry, making it worse for our fishermen. And this is how bad they are. Normally, fellas would keep quiet about this and they'd say, Jesus, soldier on, because it's going to hurt us in other ways if we talk about this, you know? But they have no choice here. You know, these people, this is their last hope. Like, they just can't keep going. It's just impossible. The deck is rigged. The game is rigged against them. And not because they're doing anything wrong. It's because they're not getting enough fish in their own waters to be able to fish in safety, that they can make enough from the fish that's in front of them and not steam away from it. Because if they steam away from the fish and they go to another place, and unfortunately for them, imagine this. Imagine somebody saying this now, a fisherman, I'm saying this, right? So a lad goes to Area 7 and he catches hake and he steams 100 miles away from it and he goes into 7A, right? And he's the same quota for hake. And unfortunately for him, he hits hake again. Sure, he's destroyed. He's caught too much hake, so if he catches too much in the month, the way we give out the system, he can't go anywhere else. He has to tie up the boat, or else he goes out and he says, well, I'll definitely try and avoid hake the next time. And again, he hits them. Imagine, he's being punished for catching fish. He's doing nothing wrong, in my eyes. He's just gone out with his boat, trying to make a living for himself and his crew, pay off the debts. And if he's unlucky to catch too much of the wrong quantities of a certain type of fish, he's done. And at the same time, he looks port or starboard, and he sees a French flag or a Belgian flag, and they don't have that problem. They seem to have plenty quota. He leaves the ground, they stay there. So they're catching the same fish he's left. And they don't seem to have the same difficulties that we have. That's amazing, right? Like, the gear is the same. They're not an alien species, like, we're all fishermen. They might use a different method, you know, but they're catching basically the same fish. They're using the same methodologies and the same equipment, you know. Then how are they able to do this and we're not? So the only way is that they're given a greater share of the pie. So they're able to take a slice of rhubarb today, or a slice of banana pie the next day, or a slice of banoffee pie, or all the different pies. They have so many pies that they've loads of choices. We're stuck with the one pie. And we can't diversify. And once you take your slice of that pie, that's it, you're done. And this is what it means for fishermen, is that they have the boats, they have the equipment, they have the skill set, they have the family, they have the drive, they have the knowledge built up over generations. Like, doesn't pop, the fellow go out tomorrow morning and do it. Like, this is a life skill that is passed down from generation to generation for most families. And as I said, they've striven all their lives to get these boats. And like, as I said, this is why all the boats are coming here, big and small, because I started off in a small boat. You know, I moved into agriculture. I didn't go into the big boats. But if I went into the big boats, it's about making a living. You understand? And that's what you're trying to do, is make a living, whether you're in a small boat or a big boat. You're just trying to provide. In a big boat, you'll have 6 or 7 other wages that you have to meet. You'll have way more expenses that you have to meet. Yes, you catch more fish, but there's greater expenses. So you have to understand is that this is what you're up against. So this is the reason for going to Dublin. We want to tell that story in Dublin. We have to tell our politicians. You have to understand what we're talking about, and we're not going there, Oliver, to tell our politicians that we want this, that, and the other thing, and just gimme. We're not. We're asking them to go back to Europe and rectify the wrongs that we felt was done to us. Like, even if Brexit never happened, we still don't have enough fish. It's not right for us to be left with 20% in our own waters. And it keeps coming back to this. The European Union agreed with the TCA agreement that because the UK became a coastal state, that it was no longer part of the European Union. So you're outside of our influence and control. And the UK asked for more fish. They said, listen, we are now a coastal state. And under international laws, we're entitled to more fish, just like Norway said about the mackerel, right? And they had to agree with them. And there was argy over the amount, right? And as you heard, it was 18% or 25%. They settled for 25%, which brought the UK from around 50% up to 74, 75%. And they lost none of their entitlements in European waters, right? Whereas they nearly have as much fish in Irish waters still than they had beforehand, but it's nearly as much as we have altogether. So you can't say that the European Union agree that this country, on the same parameters, just because it's a different country, but it's on the same continental shelf, it has the same fish swimming around its shores, and that country is allowed to catch 75% of the fish in their waters, right? And then they look at us and they say, because you're still part of the European Union, because we still have power over you, because we still call the shots, we're not only not going to bring you up to UK levels or the same levels as that our countries have in our waters, we're going to take more off you. And we know this is going to decimate your fishing fleet. We know it because we've done the studies, because STECF did the studies back in 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17, and they put money into the EMF funding that allowed Ireland to apply for a decommissioning scheme. So they knew back then that we didn't have enough fish to keep the fleet going that we had. Never mind to say no. So they took 5% of our 20 off us. We're down to 15% now. We had 20. Can you imagine? That's a quarter. I said 1 in 5, 1 in 4. Potatoes, right? It's still the same thing, whether, annihilation or death is death one way or the other. You're still dead. You're still out. You're gone. Decommissioning is decommissioning. There's no middle ground. There's no halfway house. You're done. You're gone. You're baked. It's over. And this is what they're talking about. And again, we maybe if we keep repeating the same thing over and over again, 85%, 15%, 85%, 15%. When will it dawn on the people that we're talking to? It's not right. You shouldn't be accepting this. This is going to crucify not just the fishermen out at the sea. It'll crucify their families. It'll crucify the shops where they shop and buy things. It'll crucify their communities. It'll drive less people out of those areas because there's nothing else to replace those jobs, even though you'll hear the government say we're going to put in measures to go there. If they do, they should be kicked. And I'll tell you why. Why aren't they bringing those jobs in with fishing now? If they know that there's jobs they can bring into rural Ireland, rural Ireland is already suffering, right? We're losing people from rural Ireland already. Our young people are not staying around. I spoke to a man last night and he was telling me we should be challenging this in Europe and we should be going to European courts and everything. And I said to him, we're challenging this already, left hand, right and centre, everything we're being challenged. We're challenging the 6 mile, we're challenging the Porcupine case and Porcupine Nephrops. We're challenging the rights for weighing machines and stuff. There's court cases left, right, and centre. We're sick of taking court cases. We're trying this. And I said, where's your son? Australia. His son is in Australia. and he's in a rural community here. Already he's lost his son. Like, does that not tell the picture? Even with fishing and with what we have there, his son's still at the leave, he had to go to Australia. Tell me himself he's not working. And he was a civil servant. Like, the opportunities are being taken from us in our coastal communities. And I'm in the coastal community, so I see it day to day. But it's not a big stretch to move that into the likes of Bend and the next town over or whatever. Like, take farming with that. Like, there's no factories, very little around the place, you know, that'll sustain rural life, like, you know. And then when you don't have population, you don't have the jobs inside the towns. You don't have the service industries. It is a domino effect. And if we don't do something about it right across rural Ireland, we're going to be in serious, serious trouble. It'll be a ghost town. It'll go back to when I was growing up. You just won't have the young people staying around, and it'll be a country for all men.
But Patrick, maybe one way to maybe try to explain to people what's going on is how much of the percentage of fishing does France have in their own waters, and how much a percentage of fishing do they have in Irish waters? Maybe that people might realise then, as we call it, that.
Oh, David,
how
they've
uneven
nearly
it is.
such a percentage in French waters as they do in Irish waters. And I'm laughing at this because this is the reality. So, like, we can pick the figures, right? We can pick Monk, for instance, as I said. They have 65% of the fishing in their waters. So 65% of all the fish caught in French waters, their French fleet catch it. Yet they come over to Ireland, and in Monk, for instance, they catch 59% of the Monk. I have the stock book here. Go through it if you want to, but it'll take a couple of minutes to bring up the figures again. But
but like, it's showing people really that it's not as if they're not fishing in their own waters. You know, it's not as if they're deprived of fish the way they are. These countries have fishing in their own countries.
Okay, so I'll tell you what. I'll tell you the reality of the situation now. This is how stark it is. Okay, so you know I'm on the quota management meeting, right? So this is an advisory committee that gives advice to our minister on a month-to-month basis, and we try and set the crumbs, and they are crumbs, to tell our minister on each stock what we can catch, not what we can catch, but what is the maximum amount we can give to the boats to try and keep them fishing for the 12 months of the year. So we give them a small bit, you know. It's like a plane crash, and you have your tin of food, and yeah, you could all eat it in one day and you'd starve. So what you do is you try and ration it out and stretch it out for as long as you can until you're rescued. Well, that's what we do with fishing. We try and give as much as we possibly can without making sure the boats don't tie up. Not because they're going to make X amount or there's plenty of fish there to catch. So we're going to use hake as an example, right? So at the start of the year, we went with what normally the fishing tradition was and the amount of boats that go at it. But we got it wrong. So we gave out 28 ton for a month. That's only 7 ton a week for a boat of those size now that you'll see in Dublin, which is nothing. It's nothing, right? So we'll give them 7 ton a week. So they have to, no, some boats could catch 10 one week, 10 another, and 4, and tie up for a week, whatever. Stop fishing and let the European counterparts fish away outside, which is normal the case, you know, but you don't keep your crews, you don't sustain your markets, you bring them in. There's other connections and damage that you do to that. So anyway, so it came to this month, June, right? And we had to set the quotas, and we looked at what we'd left, and there's nothing left. It's like Mother Hubbard going to the cupboard. Cupboard's empty. So we had to scramble and try and find another country who hadn't caught the hake, right? And see if we could swap something that we hadn't caught yet, not something we didn't need, but just something we just had to give. Otherwise, the hake would choke us. We'd catch nothing for the month. Our fleet would be tied to the pure wall. Just take it out now. No fishing. Right? No boats allowed out because we didn't have enough hake to allow them to go out and catch it because they can't avoid it. The hake is everywhere. Waters are full of them. We did our job. We changed our technical gear and methods, and we made sure the fish are in a good shape and the stock has risen, right? So there's plenty of hake outside there. So you shoot your net, you're going to get hake, right? So we had to scramble and we had to swap with Belgium, right? We picked them, but we looked at this, I suppose this accounting ledger, we'll call it for Europe, called Fides, right? So our department, we asked them, who could we go to for fish, right? So remember what I said to you, our quota is around 6,500 tons for the 12 calendar years. France have 10,000 tons left to catch with half the year to go. So they've double what our yearly quota was, and they've 6 months in. Spain have 4,000 tons to catch, and we hit 0. We had ours caught. This is what you're up against. Like. So you're asking me, and this is the inequality of the situation. So our boats are scrambling to try and just catch enough fish of all the different types to make their living. And if somebody says, there's too many boats, there's too many boats. Well, like in 2006, we had 280 boats under 18 meters, right? And that category now in the demersal sector is down to 160. Like that's a third already. Do you know? Gone. So how much more pain do we have to take to allow the other fleets to keep fishing inside in our waters with that amount of fish when we are not given the same rights back in their waters because of a historical tradition of catching fish, you know, or the mistakes that were made in the past. And there was mistakes made in the past. I know there was mistakes made in the past. My father was fishing in the past. And the mistakes were as we didn't develop our markets out foreign and we didn't do what we did now when we should have been trying harder to sell our fish so that we'd be catching more fish. Like I explained this story to you before my father went out. They didn't get paid for the fish. They came in the second time, second boat load of fish, but they didn't go out the third time. Because why would they go out? Burn more diesel, go deeper in debt and not get paid for fish. You know, that was the mistake. They should have sold the fish. There should have been something in place for the markets, or the regulation of the markets like we have now. And better buyers, better technology for, you know, selling fish and work harder at it. Because that in that instance, we were down a third straight away. So if the record was set on that boat, right, then he hadn't gone out the third week. I don't know, I didn't even ask him, did he not go out the fourth week in that month? He might have been tied up for 2 weeks. So that could have been 50%. Whereas there was no problem with the other boats. They couldn't get enough fish. They were bringing it home to their markets and they couldn't get back soon enough. So they didn't have the same level playing pitch that we had. So this explains a lot of what the problem is now like. So when we modernized the fleet, they said, right, you've too many boats, lads. You're catching way more fish. So you've just too many boats now. So, okay, we had the decommissioning scheme. Okay, a couple of years later, sorry, lads, we got it wrong. We still have too many boats. So they did a second decommissioning scheme. Okay, fair enough. Europe as well, too, was going through the same process. They were taking down their boats. But then there was a third one. And then they tried to get a fourth one. But this will be the fourth one. So we've paid the sacrifice for the sustainability of the fish and the stocks off our shore. I don't think anybody in Europe would argue. We've carried the can. We've paid the price to allow us to stay fishing in our own waters. We did everything that was asked of us. But now we're being told, not asked, told, because the UK want to have 75% of the fish in their waters, because they're a coastal state, we have to give up our fleet. Because we're not giving the Spanish aren't going to have to pay their fair share. The French aren't going to pay their fair share. The Dutch aren't going to pay their fair share. The Belgians, you know, this is documented. I'm not making this up. They're paying a way less than us. But they're not paying with their fish. They're paying with our fish. They're paying the UK with the fish in Irish waters. They're catching less fish now in Irish waters that they've also given. But they haven't given the fish. You asked me earlier on how much fish are the Spanish or the French catching. They didn't give fish in their EEZ. They gave them from Ireland's EEZ. So not only are we asked to pay our price, they're paying with our fish as well. And as I said, this is it's so unfair and so unjust. It's criminal. and we're being robbed. And everybody that's in Ireland is being robbed because this is money that comes into the country. This is money that we put into our economy in the country. So every man, woman, and child in this country is going to be robbed of money from make their life more difficult, make them pay more. And God knows we need it. We're hundreds of billions in debt. We need it for our roads, for our infrastructure. Like we see communities that, through no fault of their own, genuinely see their houses crumbling down around them. Like, and as a society, we're meant to look after the most unfortunate. And we are not looking to be the most unfortunate. We want to be the people that will help the most unfortunate by doing our job and bringing money into this country from a natural resource that we believe is ours. And every other country believes that the fish in their waters are theirs, but not when it comes to Irish waters. So they demand the rightful share of the fish in their waters off their shorelines, but we're not afforded the same rights, even though they're enshrined in the United Nations laws of the sea. So United Nations, this isn't some country, a Mickey Mouse job. This is the United Nations, lads. United Nations have a law of the sea. And they say migratory and stocks that fish and swim and stay in your waters, that breed in your waters, that country where that happens, and rightly so, have a bigger claim than any other country to have that fish. And if they don't have a fleet that can catch that fish, they have to share the additional resources. We're being told you had too much at 20%. Now it's going down to 15%. And the opposite to supporting your country, you're going to get money now from Europe to put your guys out of business and their kids and future generations out of business. So I don't know who's like writing the laws in Europe, but I wouldn't mind sitting down with them for a few minutes and ask them to justify how they can tell me they're going to do that. How can you write a law that takes somebody's property and their rights away from them and starves their children and puts them out of business and puts the very well-being of those coastal communities in jeopardy? What law is that? Because it doesn't sound like a good one to me. And if it doesn't sound like a good one to me, surely our Taoiseach and our politicians should realize it ain't a good one for them either. And if you allow a law like that to go unchallenged, then what's to stop the next law similar to that to affect another citizen in the country? Like, and just look around, and I'm telling you, those laws are coming, and but they'll hit rural Ireland first because they've this mindset that it's bad to be in rural Ireland or rural anywhere, that you should be stuck into a city because you need less resources inside the city for those people. And I don't understand it myself. Like, for me, biodiversity, I live in the country. I have hedgerows, I have flowers, my wife plants things for the birds, the bees, and all the animals to come in there. So we have massive wildlife in our little pocket in the farm where we're living. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing that I'm living in rural Ireland. Do you know? I have my own well, my own water, don't pollute the place. You know? It's a good thing. I would be hoping my children go to school and they're living in the open, fresh air, and they have a good standard of living, and there's no crime, or, whereas I find it be productive. I hope that other people in rural Ireland would feel the same. And why should we be allowed to be annihilated? I just think it's wrong.
Yeah. Back to the flotilla on Wednesday, 23rd. Have you speakers lined up for the day?
Yeah, so like for the first point on the TCA agreement, like the unfair burden sharing, that we were penalised, that we paid the biggest price in Europe for the deal. Sean O'Donoghue, the CEO of the KFO, is hoping he'll speak. The revoking of Ireland's control plan, unjustly so, crazy stuff again. Like Brendan Byrne from the IFPEA will be speaking. I don't know, has this been told to the individual I'm going to name now, but he's a man very passionate in the industry, and he feels really slighted by his traditional grounds of Rockall being taken away from him. So I don't know, has he been approached? So I don't know, is it safe to say here now, because I haven't spoken to him. So maybe I'll leave that speaker out. But he's been vocal anyway, and he's a good speaker on it. His loss of his access to the fishing grounds off Rockall. So on enforcements and the penalty points, John Ward from the IFPO is going to speak on that. And again, another crazy situation that we're facing. The Brexit Adjustment Fund, the BAR fund, I suppose maybe like a vaccine, we could call it, to keep fellas going for a bit longer. I don't know. There's huge problems with that at the moment, state aid rules and everything else, and trying to get something organised for our country that we meet the criteria of what the BAR fund is for. I was told that crazily that the state, any agencies of the state that incurred an expense from Brexit are entitled to get a reimbursement from that fund. But a fisherman that maybe have changed over gear or bought a different type method of fishing, or because he lost the opportunities, he was pushed out of a fishery, or he was at mackerel, or he had to do something else, or went to whitefish. He's not included in that. I find that incredible. So John Lynch is going to speak about that, and then to me, this is the key. So the renegotiation of the common fishery policy. It's a common fishery policy, and that Ireland is allocated a just and fair share of fish that reflects our contribution to Europe. They come to fish in our waters. We don't go to theirs. And surely to God that should be recognised. So Damien Turner from the Irish Southwest will speak for that. My job on the day is to try and keep everybody ticking over and pass out the mic and fill in the gaps, tell a few jokes maybe. Not many to tell now on an occasion like this, but I think from this interview, anybody, if you can get through it, will know that I've no problem speaking anyway. And I hope we'll do that on today as well. We're hoping for other people to come up and take the mic and talk to the crowd, tell their own stories and things like that. Maybe a young fisherman might give an understanding of what it's like for him and his fear for the futures. We're not going to be at this for long now, because at 6 speakers, so if we give 5 minutes talking, a minute to swap over, that's 36 minutes. We're hoping people will come early and talk to the boats and get the background story and have a look at the boats and talk to the people. Make sure that it's human, like that these aren't robots, these are men, women and children. See the kids, they'll be up there and they have the placards up already, where's my future? Why is it being taken from me? What have we done wrong, And that is, kids, imagine a teenager that all his life was looking forward to going into the industry, and then be told by his father, listen, don't bother, it's a waste of time. But Dad, you have a boat worth 3 or 4 million there, you worked all your life for that. I just want the opportunity to fish it. Son, I'm sorry, there's just not enough, or girl or daughter, there's just not enough fish there. It just can't happen. That's just cruel.
How many boats are you taking, or how many boats have signed up so far? Is there
the problem is that we're oversubscribed. Like we made a commitment. They are Southwest at first, to the port authorities and to the peace keepers, or Garda Síochána, that we would not do anything that would knowingly cause harm or interrupt or pass on our misfortune or to anybody else. So the bridge is going to be lifted for an hour. We're hoping that might be extended, but at the moment we're working on that basis, and we're looking at the facilities that's being provided to us. And we have well over 100 boats wanting to go there, but we'll have to be realistic. And unfortunately, there won't be room for everybody. So I can't give you a definitive number, but I can tell you that there's over 100 boats wanted to go to this, big and small, from all over the country. But we'll have to be realistic and see what can be accommodated on the day, and there's more to be worked out on that. But over 100 boats was the figure that could easily be brought to Dublin. Again, this, Oliver, is about people's futures. This is it for them. If, you know, they cannot believe what's happening to them. They and I mean that, they just cannot believe it. You know, it hasn't sunken in yet. And even though they're looking at the quota sheets month by month and they're going, what happened? Like, you know, Jesus Christ, what am I supposed to do now? And it's squeezing the life out of them. And they're in a position, like, I tie my boat to the pier wall, I don't earn a cent. I'm in trouble straight away. If I go fishing, it could cost me more money, and not because the fish aren't there, but I can't catch them. If I catch the wrong fish, I'll be arrested and I'll lose my catch. I'll be fined. I'll be criminalized. I'll have a red mark. I'll have penalty points and thing. So it's really crazy what's being asked of these people, and that's why they're coming to Dublin. The whole reason for them to come to Dublin is to actually appeal for justice, to get what's right, and they need people to support them. And they need the Irish people to support them. And in return for that support, they will do their bit for the Irish economy. They will do their job. They will go out and they'll catch fish. They'll sell that fish and they'll bring that money back into Ireland. And that money will be put into our economy without question. And that'll support more jobs, keep our communities strong, keep our traditions alive, keep our children happy and safe, keep your children happy and safe, and provide opportunities for the next generations, and bring in food to feed you. So it's all plus, 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 plus. And all they're asking for is the right to be able to do that, the same as any other fisherman from any other country in Europe. And I don't think it's a big ask. But they are asking for help.
Sorry.
They get the message across. They're asking for help from anybody from our coastal communities to come up and show your support for this event. And that's because that's what'll count, right? That's what's going to make the heads turn and the ears to open and pay attention, the eyes widen. You know, the more people they see up there, the more they'll say, now we have to do something. You know, we can't ignore this any longer. We can't allow this to go on any longer. We have to start listening to these people. And as I said, anybody that comes up to Dublin, please be assured, we're not asking for the impossible here. We're asking for them to listen to what the industry has to say, listen to what can be done and what should be done. And it can, and it will if you help us. I believe that. I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. So thanks again for the opportunity, Oliver.
Well, just one more question. Just one more quick question. Now, for anybody listening, what time can you get access to the where is it?
The boats will be in. Yeah, I'd say the boats will be putting out the gangplanks and they'll be coming out of the boats around 9 o'clock after Brexit. They don't want to be coming out too early because it's not right for people to be hanging around. So if you're there around 10 o'clock, you can go to Rogers Quay and see the boats, meet the fishermen that are there. They'll be there for an hour and a half. So you'll be able to talk to the lads, right? We'll be walking, then we'll be taking the people across then the bridge over to the park there alongside the convention centre, where we'll have a big screen and we'll be showing clips of interviews and telling the tale of people in the industry and their fear for the future and what they would like to see happen, and just giving a little bit more context. And you're more than welcome then to talk to us and come up at that stage as well and just listen. Just listen to what we're saying. Just listen to the speakers. You know, repeat it to your neighbours. Go home. Don't let it in Dublin. We have to keep this going. If you believe that what we're saying is true, if you believe that where you're living is going to be damaged by the inaction that we see, and it is inaction, because we believe if there is an action there, we'll get a result. If we have the right people going to Brussels and telling them, because I don't think they can justify what they've done. As I said to you, I would love to see the law that they've used to allow them to take our natural resource to this extent of us. I don't think Ireland gave them that right. And I think we should challenge it now. And I think it should be done straight away. And I think we'll overturn what's after happening and even get more back. And we're not asking for people to give up fish. We're asking them to give us the fish that they're not catching anyway. As I said to you, France has 10,000 tons left. Like if we can do with 6,500, our fleet, for an entire year, and they have 10,000 for the last 5 to 6 months. Sure, that's not right. Spain have 4,000 tons, and we've nothing. You know, and it's the same with the monk. You know, we're not asking fellas to give up their jobs in France. They have a bigger margin than us, so we need people to come up. So come and talk to us. 10 o'clock in the morning, I would be showing up myself. Be relaxed, walk around. We'll even give you a sandwich and a bottle of water. There's lads bringing up some food like that, so you know you won't be left go hungry. And you just meet the lads and talk to the families that are there. There'll be the wives of the fishermen. Let them tell you the story and talk yourself. Tell your own story. It's a gathering. It's a nice social event as well too, and it's out in the open air. COVID restrictions and everything will be adhered to. There's groups of 100 allowed, so we'll keep people as far separated as possible. And look, wear a mask. There's no problem. You know, we can talk to you without masks. Be safe, but come and show your support for your own fellow rural people. If you're coming from rural Ireland, if you're from the towns and the cities and you want to come and see a little bit about fishing, you mightn't see it too often. It's been brought to your doorstep. So the people of Dublin can come down and see these. They heard of Molly Malone selling her cockles and mussels alive. Come down and meet the fishermen. Come down and see the boats. See how modern, see how proud you should be in these men and women, Irish men and women, have reached the pinnacle. They're as good as any fisherman in Europe. They can compete with anybody. They'd probably actually surpass them if they were allowed. And these are the boats and the equipment that's put into them. They're like a cockpit of an airplane. So come 10 o'clock in the morning, talk to the fishermen for an hour and a half. Come across with us then to our rally, and that's what it is. It's a rally where we just tell the points, 6 quick points. We might have a couple of speakers coming up that might be brave enough to come up and avoid the shyness and tell their own personal stories that are up there. We're hoping for a few people to do that and just give it a human element touch, not just us, the representatives of the organisation, but the real stories from the real people. Like from this list now, there's just going to be 3 fishermen, so we'll have 3 representatives and 3 fishermen speaking of the points, you know. And we'll have the inshore lads and the lads from the islands, so there'll be a representative from them to come up and tell their tale as well too. I'm from an island. I would claim to be an islander myself. I wasn't born there, but I spent a lot of time there, and we still have our land there, so I would claim that. So we'll have those people as well too, and we'll try and cover everybody. And any questions that you have, or say hello to me. There's no problem. I'll talk for Ireland, and we can have a chat and give you our details and pass it on. And but we need support. We need people to get behind what's happening here in Dublin. We need people outside of our industry to see that this is not an industry that should be thrown on the scrap heap or decommissioned. So, you know, it's something that we should definitely cherish. Because when it's gone, it's gone. It won't be coming back. If we lose our industry, and trust me, I can see it happening. We lose our industry, it's gone. And it won't be done with the bullet or the gun or the knife or the sword. It'll be done with the pen. And it'll be a tragedy for our country and for future generations. I'd hate for a smallie to look up into your eyes and say, Dad, you were a fisherman, what happened? I have the dear old skipperine ringing in my ears, and I'd hate for another song like that to be sung by the next generation of the loss of our fishing industry and the people that were involved in it, you know.